President Traoré didn't face a coup with guns. He faced it with 30 billion francs in fake money, printed in silence, spread in markets designed to crash the economy and remove him without a single bullet. But he saw through it, he fought back, and what he uncovered shocked all of Africa. Subscribe if you believe Africa deserves truth louder than their lies. But the first alarm wasn't raised in the war room. It was whispered quietly, almost nervously, deep inside the counting halls of the Central Bank of Burkina Faso. By a name no one knew yet, Aminata Sawado. A junior clear with calloused fingers and precise hands stopped mid-count. Something wasn't right, texture tone, scent flawless, but her instincts rang louder than the machines. She took the notes to her manager. "Sir, I think these aren't ours." Jean-Claude Cabot, seasoned and sceptical, nearly waved her off, but the ultraviolet light didn't lie, and the microscale, unforgiving the bills, were fake, not sloppy street fake high-grade machine, perfect, undetectable to standard checks. Cable froze, his hands trembled. "If this leaks," he whispered, "trust in the currency vanishes. We'll have a run on the bank's chaos." He called the Minister of Finance. Laurent Bonga answered calm as ice. "Say nothing. I'll brief the president when the news reached Trey." He listened in silence. No outburst, no theatrics, just one pause, then a sentence, quiet, cold, unshakable. "This is not crime, it's sabotage within the hour." The National Security Council was assembled, Interior, Finance, Defense, Intelligence, all present, all waiting. Traoré entered without entourage, dressed simply, gaze steady. "We are under economic attack," he said. "They chose ink instead of gunpowder, but the goal is the same: destabilization." He stood straight, hands behind his back. "We will act not in fear, but in clarity." And so Operation Black Ink was born in quiet corridors and coded signals. A new war had begun. Not against rebels, not against militias, but against a network capable of collapsing a country. One bill at a time, the air inside the presidential compound felt unusually dense that morning. Curtains drawn, phones disabled. A hush blanketed the room like early fog over Ouagadougou. The National Security Council had gathered at the head of the long wooden table. Sat President Traoré, his uniform unadorned, his gaze unwavering. His presence demanded silence, not by command, but by conviction. Men decades, his senior, leaned in, not out of protocol, but because they trusted him on the table before him. A folder marked, classified, a glass of water untouched, and a single counterfeit banknote identical to the real except for the threat it carried. Traoré broke the silence. "This isn't a local crime," he said. "This is systemic, strategic, coordinated." The Minister of Finance nodded gravely. "We've confirmed an abnormal spike in cash flow over the last 8 weeks. Billions entered the economy. Untraced, we initially assumed black market funds or NGO laundering. We were wrong." The central bank governor added, "Markets are inflating, sellers are raising prices daily, afraid the money in hand will be worthless tomorrow." Traoré glanced at the intelligence chief. "What does the data say?" Colonel Arago stood tablet in hand. "Surveillance shows unusual cargo entries through the southern border, bulk shipments, labelled as printing paper, and office equipment. Some were routed through companies that barely exist." "And who owns those companies?" Traoré asked without raising his voice a beat. Then Arago answered. "One name keeps recurring: François Wado, owner of a small print house in Kédougou. 5 months ago, he was bankrupt today. He owns 2 villas, 3 vehicles, and has made cash real estate purchases in the capital. Traoré stood slowly. "There is a network," he said, "printing at industrial scale, shielded by shell companies, funded from outside, coordinated from within." He walked toward the window, looking past the National Gardens, past the city skyline, into something deeper, into a history that refused to die. "They're not just flooding the market," he continued. "They're planting distrust, weakening our economy, preparing the ground for panic and then revolt." He turned. "We must be faster than their ink, Then came the order. A task force would be assembled that same day, top forensic economists, seasoned intelligence officers, trusted field agents, and a special operations unit. Their goal trace, the source identify. Collaborators prevent a financial implosion. Every shipment, every ledger, every whisper. Core said track it. The room nodded, no applause. Just a rising urgency, Trade's final words before leaving the room lingered like prophecy empires used to fall by bullets. Ours could fall by forgery, but not today. The meeting ended before noon by sundown. Operation Black Ink was alive. Colonel Arago took point, flanked by two specialists in economic forensics and cyber finance. Orders were clear. Traoré wanted names, companies, containers, documents, and no noise. The task force worked in silence, but with precision. No briefings, no paper trails, just encrypted lines and old-fashioned legwork. The first lead came from the texture of the counterfeit paper itself. Unlike standard stock used by Burkina Faso's mint, this batch had microfiber density only available in high-grade industrial supply chains, most of them foreign. They needed to find which companies imported such paper into Burkina Faso. In the last 6 months, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, young sharp, trusted by Traoré, dived into customs records with a team of 3. He scanned hundreds of shipment logs in a buried line of digital entries. He found them 5 separate deliveries of office paper rolls imported under shell corporations with shallow tax IDs. 3 were dead ends, but the 4th primary modern ESA printing wasn't the listed owner, François Wado, a name Colonel Arago had already flagged. Traoré pulled his file. A local print technician from Ouagadougou who went bankrupt a year ago. Suddenly 5 months ago, Wado purchased a villa in the upscale district of Ouaga-Nord. Then came the cars. Then the foreign vacations. His declared income, still listed as freelance design consultant, suspicion turned to certainty. Traoré presented his findings to Traoré that evening. "Mr. President," he began, placing a folder on the desk. "This company has no business history before February, but since March they've imported high-resolution printing machines, rare ink composites, and advanced cutting gear enough to supply a national mint." Traoré leaned forward, scanning the documents. His voice was low, but the room tensed around it. "Is he protected?" Traoré nodded. "We believe he's being watched or owned. Surveillance already underway. We're tracking his communications movements. Associates, we're keeping distance. No contact." Traoré closed the file gently. "I want his world X-rayed, every person he speaks to, every number he calls, every cafe he enters. But no alarms, let him feel safe." The shadow team moved in Wed's villa, became a node of data. Cameras perched in unmarked cars, microphones inside flower pots, drones in the night sky. He lived alone, but met many bankers, clerics, former bureaucrats, foreign men with diplomatic plates. Nothing conclusive until a Thursday midnight, where Traoré exited his home, dressed in black. He entered a nondescript 4-wheel drive. No destination on the GPS, just south, out of the city. The team followed 2 cars behind target, leaving Ouagadougou, heading southeast. The radio buzzed. He drove for an hour past industrial fields toward a shuttered textile complex near Koudog. He parked outside a rusted warehouse. The gates opened. He entered from inside. Faint humming lights flickered. Machines were operating. The surveillance officer whispered through the line. "They're printing right now." At that moment, Traoré was informed. He didn't blink. "Hold your position, sir," he said. "No engagement. I'll lead the entry myself." And with that, the president of Burkina Faso prepared to walk into the lion's den. Not as a politician, but as a soldier. It was 1:37 in the morning when the convoy moved 20 unmarked vehicles' engines, low headlights off, gliding through the sleeping arteries of Ouagadougou. Inside one of them, President Traoré sat still, helmet resting beside him. Eyes locked forward, he had insisted on leading the operation. Not from a distant command post, but from the front. The last radio transmission came. In target, confirmed lights inside the warehouse machinery active. No exits detected. Captain Dio, in the lead vehicle, adjusted his grip. "We wait on your signal, sir." Traoré simply nodded. The convoy halted 200 metres from the compound trees, provided cover drones circled above, feeding infrared images to the command screen. Inside, the warehouse bodies moved between massive machines. Paper stacks glowed under the heat lamps. The airwaves buzzed with the hum of mechanical betrayal. Traoré stood and stepped out into the night. He walked quietly, flanked by 2 close guards toward the perimeter. At the final bend, he took the megaphone attention inside the building. "This is Burkina Faso's National Command. You are surrounded. Do not resist silence." Then the machine stopped. Lights shut off. Shadows darted. "Prepare breach," Dio whispered. "They're destroying evidence." "No gunfire unless provoked," Traoré ordered. "Capture is priority proof. Must survive." The main gate was forced open. Special forces flowed in like a tide, silent, focused. Every corridor swept, every door burst open. No resistance, but what they found made the silence deafening. Inside the main chamber stood 3 industrial printing presses, still warm. Their conveyor belts halted mid-run. Hundreds of half-finished counterfeit francs lay scattered like shed skin. Ink spilled onto the floor like oil blood. Surveillance computers were still on documents. "Hadn't been burned yet. Secure the room," Dio shouted. "Collect everything." Traoré entered last. He didn't speak. He simply walked to the closest machine and laid his hand on it. "They built this to break us," he said softly, "but it ends tonight." In the back room, 12 suspects were rounded up, technicians, guards, handlers among them. François Weidel, still sweating, still in disbelief when shown the evidence. He said nothing, but the biggest revelation came moments later. Captain Dio opened a locked cabinet and retrieved a folder wrapped in plastic inside a list of names, transaction records, foreign phone codes, and several sealed envelopes. One bore the insignia of a foreign diplomatic service. Dio looked up. "So you need to see this, Traoré." Took the folder. He read for a moment, then his jaw clenched. "This isn't just fake money, it's a blueprint for a coup." He turned to the officer beside him. "No one leaves. Interrogate every suspect before sunrise." As the sun began to rise beyond the warehouse walls, the truth was already unravelling, and it would soon shake more than just Burkina Faso. What would you do if ink became a weapon share? Your feelings in the comments below. The press conference was held at 6:45 a.m. Just hours after the raid. Behind President Traoré stood a wall of confiscated evidence. 3 industrial printers, 10 crates of unfinished counterfeit francs, and 13 hard drives. The numbers were staggering. 30 billion francs printed in just 4 months, enough to shake the market of an entire region in front of the cameras. Traoré held up one of the counterfeit notes. "Can you tell the difference?" he asked calmly. "Neither could the markets." He paused. "They wanted to devalue our money, collapse our economy, and replace this government with one they control, but they failed." Then he lifted a folder and opened it. "Here are the names." A projector lit up the room, froze former finance ministers, ex-parliamentarians, 5 powerful businessmen, 1 diplomat, and a foreign contractor with alleged intelligence links as the list scrolled. Journalists sat in silence. Then one voice broke through. "Mr. President," a BBC correspondent asked, "are you saying this was orchestrated abroad?" Traoré looked directly at him. "I'm saying this was not just fraud, this was coordinated subversion." "Yes, there are foreign fingerprints." Before the journalist could recover, another man was led to the podium in handcuffs. Pascal Tabsoba, the technical manager of the fake printing operation. His eyes were sunken. His voice trembled. "They said it was just a job, just paper, when we refused to print more. They threatened our families." Traoré stepped aside. "Who gave the order?" Tabsoba hesitated. "Jerome Kari," he finally said. "Former finance minister, and who funded him?" Tabsoba looked down. The accounts were offshore. Switzerland, Dubai, sometimes Spain, over $10 million transferred in batches. Always from new accounts, we were told to keep printing over the next 24 hours. 38 additional arrests were made across Burkina Faso villas in Ouagadougou, were raided, secret safes were cracked open, laptops were seized by the end of the second day. 50 suspects were in custody. Evidence of the operation was now undeniable. On the third day, Jerome Curry confessed he spoke slowly, shoulders low, staring at the floor. There were meetings in Abidjan, sometimes ACRA planning sessions. The goal was to create inflation, spark protests, then push for army intervention. Why? Because Traoré was aligning with Mali and Niger because he wanted a new currency system that scared them. Who is them? The investigator asked. Curry didn't speak the next evening. Traoré returned to the national stage. This time, his message was not just for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa. We are not alone in this struggle, he said. This counterfeit network reached beyond our borders. It sought to poison every francophone nation, but Africa is waking up. His words travelled within 2 days. Ivory Coast raided 2 similar facilities. Ghana arrested 20 individuals linked to the same financial trail in Togo. A warehouse was found containing 2 billion francs in fake currency. Africa was under attack, but Africa was now alert on day 5. Traoré visited the young engineers at the National Mint. They had already begun dismantling the seized machines, not to destroy them, but to study them. The enemy's tools would now become Africa's shield. You turned sabotage into strength, he told them. This is our answer. The counterfeit notes were publicly burned in a symbolic ceremony at the central bank Trao. Personally threw the first bundle into the flames. No one will ever steal the dignity of our labour again, he said. But the fire did more than burn paper. It lit something deeper, a spirit of resistance. The fire roared for 7 hours straight inside the courtyard of the Burkina Faso Central Bank, under the watchful eyes of the nation. 30 billion francs in counterfeit currency were reduced to ashes. Trao threw the first bundle into the flames. The ink hissed. The paper curled the weight of a silent invasion burned before his people. This is not just fake money, he said. This was war, and this is justice. The crowd erupted. Mothers wept, youths raised fists, elders whispered blessings. But Traoré was not finished behind the fire in a repurposed wing of the central bank. Engineers worked around the clock. The machines seized during the midnight raid, worth over $8 million, were being stripped, analysed, reverse engineered. We will not destroy these, Traoré had declared. We will learn from them and we will build stronger. A new division was born, the National Monetary Security Lab, staffed by 42 young engineers and data analysts, trained to detect forgery at every level. From paper fibres to holographic inks, the lab became operational within 12 days of the raid. In that first month, they developed 3 new layers of currency protection never before used in West Africa. Meanwhile, shockwaves from the operation echoed across the continent by week 2. Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Senegal and Benin had launched internal investigations. 76 suspects were arrested. 4 print hubs were dismantled. Over 40 billion francs in fake currency was intercepted across 6 borders at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. An emergency summit was called. Traoré joined via secure video feed. Brothers and sisters, he said, addressing 54 national delegations. They no longer come with chains or rifles. They come with false credit, financial viruses, and silent corruption. The room rose in applause. His proposals were swift, clear. Create a continental anti-counterfeit intelligence network, develop a pan-African currency security protocol fund, a shared African central bank research hub within 14 days. The African Monetary Security Commission was ratified by 38 countries. For the first time in post-ECOWAS history, Africa was uniting its defence not around soldiers, but around currency sovereignty and truth. And in Burkina Faso, the people were already living. The change, the inflation scare had passed. Trust in the national currency had risen by 11%. Small businesses began accepting francs again, without hesitation. International partners previously cautious resumed trade agreements in schools across Burkina Faso. A new subject was quietly added to the national curriculum: economic independence and financial defense. Children learned how money works and how it could be weaponized. Traoré visited one of these schools. A boy stood and asked, "Can they do this again?" The president paused, then smiled. "They will try, but next time we won't be surprised. Next time we will be ready months later." As the world moved on, Traoré's quiet revolution continued. The Phoenix Plan, as it came to be known, wasn't just about recovery. It was about rebirth, about proving that Africa could take the weapon used against it and turn it into a shield, then a spear. The final act of the plan came quietly inside the old printing house, once owned by François Wedo. Now national property, a plaque was hung here, stood the machine meant to destroy a nation. It failed beneath it. The date of the raid, the list of engineers who rebuilt it, and Traoré's final words on the matter. "We did not just stop them. We learned their language, then rewrote the code, a story of paper betrayal and resistance. But more than anything, this is a story of Africa rising." Now we turn to you. We turn to what did this story awaken in your heart? How do you feel about Traoré's courage, about the unity of our people and the future of Africa? Let your voice be heard. Share your feelings in the comments below. And as we close this chapter, let us lift one prayer. May God bless Burkina Faso. May He bless every African land that dares to stand tall. May truth protect our children and wisdom guide our leaders. Amen. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that Africa is not broken, but becoming, then go ahead and like this video, share it with someone who needs to believe again, and subscribe to join us on more journeys like this. Until next time, stay proud, stay awake, and stay African.